sun cast long shadows across the military compound as Captain Sarah Chen laced up her running shoes for what she believed would be just another routine weekend training session. The digital clock on her barracks wall read 0530 hours, and the base was still wrapped in the quiet embrace of dawn. She had always been an early riser, finding solace in the crisp morning air and the rhythmic pounding of her feet against the asphalt. What she didn't know was that this particular Saturday would transform her life in ways she could never have imagined. Sarah had joined the military 5 years earlier, fresh out of college with a degree in engineering and a burning desire to serve her country. Standing at 5 feet 6 inches with the lean build of a natural runner, she had quickly established herself as one of the most dedicated soldiers in her unit. Her colleagues knew her as someone who never backed down from a challenge, whether it was mastering complex technical equipment or pushing through grueling physical training exercises. But today felt different somehow, charged with an energy she couldn't quite explain. As she stepped out into the cool morning air, the familiar scent of pine trees mixed with the distant aroma of coffee brewing in the mess hall. The base was situated in a valley surrounded by rolling hills and dense forests, creating a natural amphitheater that seemed to amplify every sound. Her breath formed small clouds in the chilly air as she began her warm-up routine, stretching her legs and preparing her muscles for what she planned to be a standard 10-kilometer run through the perimeter trail. The trail itself was notorious among the soldiers for its challenging terrain. It wound through dense woodland, up steep inclines, and across rocky outcroppings that demanded both physical endurance and mental focus. Most soldiers completed it in groups, finding motivation in shared struggle and camaraderie. But Sarah preferred to run alone, using the solitude to clear her mind and push her limits without the pressure of keeping pace with others or the distraction of conversation. As she settled into her stride, her mind wandered to the events of the previous week. Her unit had been preparing for an upcoming deployment, and the stress of endless briefings, equipment checks, and training exercises had taken its toll on everyone. Sleep had been scarce, tensions were high, and several of her fellow soldiers had been struggling with the mounting pressure. Sarah had found herself taking on additional responsibilities, helping younger recruits with their preparations and staying late to ensure everything was perfect. The first kilometer passed easily, her legs finding their familiar rhythm as she navigated the well-worn path. The forest around her was alive with the sounds of morning, birds calling to each other from the treetops, small animals rustling through the underbrush, and the distant hum of base activity beginning to stir. She had run this trail countless times before, but today she felt unusually strong, as if her body was operating on a different level entirely. By the 3rd kilometer, she realized something extraordinary was happening. Instead of feeling the usual fatigue that would begin to creep into her legs and lungs, she felt energized, almost euphoric. Her breathing remained steady and controlled, her heartbeat strong but not labored. It was as if her body had found a perfect harmony between effort and efficiency, a zone that athletes often spoke about but rarely achieved. The trail began its steepest ascent around the 5th kilometer mark, a punishing climb that typically forced even the strongest runners to slow their pace significantly. Sarah approached it with her usual determination, but as she began the climb, she discovered something remarkable. Instead of struggling against the incline, she seemed to flow up it, her legs powering her forward with a strength and grace she had never experienced before. Other runners she encountered along the way stopped to stare as she passed, their expressions mixing admiration with disbelief. As she crested the hill and began the descent on the far side, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Instead of completing her planned 10-kilometer loop and returning to base, she felt compelled to continue running. The forest stretched out before her, offering countless trails and pathways she had never fully explored. Her body was telling her it had more to give, much more, and her spirit was urging her to discover just how far she could go. The decision wasn't made lightly. She understood the risks of venturing into unfamiliar territory alone, especially for an extended period. But something deep inside her, a voice she had never heard before, was calling her forward. She checked her watch, noted her position, and made a mental calculation of her supplies and capabilities. Then, with a deep breath and a surge of excitement, she veered off the familiar trail and into uncharted territory. What followed was nothing short of magical. For hours, Sarah ran through landscapes of breathtaking beauty, her feet carrying her across meadows dotted with wildflowers, through streams that sparkled like diamonds in the dappled sunlight, and up ridges that offered panoramic views of the surrounding countryside. She felt as if she were floating, her body moving with an efficiency and power she had never known she possessed. Time seemed to lose all meaning as she ran. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and still she continued, driven by an internal engine that showed no signs of slowing down. She encountered other hikers and runners along the various trails, all of whom stopped to watch her pass with expressions of wonder and respect. There was something about her movement, her posture, her obvious strength and determination that commanded attention and admiration. As the afternoon wore on, Sarah began to realize that she was experiencing something truly extraordinary. She had been running for over 6 hours without stopping, covering terrain that would challenge even the most experienced trail runners, and she still felt strong. Her body had settled into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing, and her mind had achieved a state of clarity and focus that was almost meditative in its intensity. But what Sarah didn't know was that her extraordinary performance was being tracked by more than just casual observers on the trail. Hidden surveillance cameras positioned throughout the forest preserve, originally installed to monitor wildlife migration patterns, had been picking up her movement for the past 3 hours. In a secure facility 40 miles away, Dr. Elena Vasquez, a biomechanical researcher working on a classified military project, was staring at her computer screen in complete disbelief. "This is impossible," she whispered to her colleague, Dr. Marcus Webb, who had been analyzing the same data feed. The readings showed that Sarah had been maintaining an average pace that would be impressive for a marathon runner, except she had already covered nearly twice the distance of a marathon, with no signs of fatigue or deterioration in her performance. More puzzling still, her thermal signature remained remarkably stable, suggesting that her body was processing energy and managing heat in ways that defied conventional understanding of human physiology. Dr. Vasquez had been researching human performance optimization for the past decade, specifically focusing on how certain individuals seemed capable of extraordinary feats under stress. Her work was part of a larger military initiative designed to identify and develop elite soldiers with exceptional physical and mental capabilities. She had seen impressive performances before, but nothing that approached what they were witnessing with Sarah Chen. Meanwhile, Sarah herself was becoming aware that something unprecedented was happening to her body. As she entered her 7th hour of continuous running, she began to notice subtle changes that both thrilled and concerned her. Her vision seemed sharper, more acute, allowing her to spot potential obstacles or changes in terrain from much greater distances than normal. Her hearing had become incredibly sensitive, enabling her to detect the approach of other trail users long before they came into view. Most remarkably, she seemed to have developed an almost supernatural awareness of her body's needs and limitations. She could sense precisely how much energy remained in her muscles, could feel the exact level of hydration in her cells, and could monitor her heart rate and breathing with an accuracy that rivaled sophisticated medical equipment. It was as if her consciousness had expanded to encompass every cell and system in her body, creating a feedback loop of information that allowed her to optimize her performance in real time. The trail had led her into a region of the preserve she had never explored before, a remote area where the forest gave way to dramatic rock formations and hidden valleys. As she navigated a particularly challenging section that required her to scramble over large boulders and leap across small crevasses, she realized that her coordination and balance had also undergone a remarkable transformation. Movements that should have required careful planning and cautious execution felt effortless and intuitive, as if her body knew exactly where to place each foot and how to distribute her weight for maximum efficiency. It was in this remote section of the preserve that Sarah encountered something that would add an entirely new dimension to her extraordinary day. As she crested a particularly high ridge, she spotted something moving in the valley below that made her stop for the first time in hours. A small aircraft, clearly in distress, was making an emergency landing in a narrow meadow between two steep hillsides. The plane touched down roughly, bounced several times, and came to rest at an awkward angle that suggested significant damage. Without hesitation, Sarah began making her way down the steep slope toward the crash site. Her enhanced physical capabilities proved invaluable as she navigated the treacherous descent, using her improved balance and coordination to move quickly while maintaining complete control. As she drew closer, she could see that the aircraft was a small private plane, and there appeared to be at least 2 people inside who were not moving. The pilot, a man in his 60s, was conscious but clearly dazed and possibly injured. In the passenger seat, a young woman who couldn't have been more than 20 years old was unconscious, a thin stream of blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. The aircraft's radio was crackling with static, and Sarah could smell aviation fuel beginning to leak from somewhere beneath the wreckage. "Can you hear me?" Sarah called out as she approached the aircraft. The pilot turned toward her voice, his eyes struggling to focus. "We need to get you both out of there. Can you move?" The pilot nodded weakly and began trying to unbuckle his harness, but his hands were shaking too badly to manage the mechanism. Sarah quickly assessed the situation, noting that the aircraft's door was jammed but not completely sealed. Using her enhanced strength, she was able to pry it open with relative ease, something that would have been nearly impossible for most people without proper tools. "What happened?" she asked as she helped the pilot from his seat. He was a distinguished-looking man with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to authority, though he was clearly shaken by the crash. "Engine failure," he managed to say. "Lost power about 10 minutes ago. Had to put her down wherever I could find space." He gestured weakly toward the unconscious young woman. "That's my granddaughter, Emma. We were flying back from her college graduation when everything went wrong." Sarah quickly moved to examine Emma, using her newly heightened senses to assess the young woman's condition. Her breathing was steady, her pulse strong, and the head wound appeared to be superficial despite the blood. However, Sarah could detect something else, a subtle change in the smell of the aircraft's interior that suggested the fuel leak was getting worse. "We need to get her out of here now," Sarah said urgently. "I think there might be a fire risk." She carefully but quickly extracted Emma from her seat, lifting her with an ease that surprised even herself. The young woman was petite, but Sarah felt as if she were carrying nothing more than a sleeping child. Once both passengers were a safe distance from the aircraft, Sarah turned her attention to the next challenge. How to get help to this remote location. The pilot's radio equipment appeared to be damaged, and they were in a part of the preserve where cell phone reception was notoriously poor. However, Sarah remembered passing a fire lookout tower several kilometers back along the trail, and she knew that such facilities typically had emergency communication equipment. "I'm going to go for help," she told the pilot, who had introduced himself as Colonel James Harrison, retired Air Force. "There's an emergency station about an hour away. Can you take care of your granddaughter until I get back?" Colonel Harrison looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and amazement. "You've been running all day, haven't you? I can see it in the way you move, the way you're breathing. Most people would be exhausted after what you've already done, but you look like you could run another marathon." Sarah paused, suddenly aware of just how remarkable her situation truly was. She had been running for nearly 8 hours, had just performed a rescue operation that required significant physical exertion, and yet she still felt strong and ready for more. The realization sent a chill of excitement and apprehension through her. "I'll be back as soon as possible," she promised, and then she was off again, her feet finding their rhythm as she began the challenging return journey to the fire tower. As she ran, she couldn't help but reflect on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. What had started as a simple training run had become something far more significant. A test of capabilities she never knew she possessed, and a rescue mission that required every bit of her enhanced abilities. The run back to the fire tower was a race against time, and Sarah pushed herself harder than ever before. The terrain was even more challenging in reverse, requiring her to climb steep inclines that she had descended earlier, but her body responded with power and efficiency that continued to amaze her. She could feel her muscles working in perfect harmony, her cardiovascular system delivering oxygen with remarkable efficiency, and her mind calculating the most efficient routes and techniques with computer-like precision. When she finally reached the fire tower, Sarah discovered that her adventures were far from over. The facility was staffed by a young forest ranger named David Kim, who had been monitoring weather conditions and fire risks from his elevated position. When Sarah burst into the station, her story of the aircraft crash and her extraordinary day of running seemed almost too incredible to believe. But David was a practical man, trained to respond quickly to emergencies, and he could see the urgency and sincerity in Sarah's eyes. He immediately began coordinating with emergency services, providing precise coordinates for the crash site and arranging for a helicopter rescue team to be dispatched. As he worked, he kept glancing at Sarah with a mixture of professional respect and personal curiosity. "You ran from the base this morning?" he asked during a brief pause in his communications. "That's got to be at least 30 kilometers from here, and you're telling me you went even further beyond that to reach the crash site?" Sarah nodded, suddenly becoming fully aware of just how far she had traveled. She had been so focused on the running, so caught up in the incredible sensations of her enhanced performance, that she hadn't been keeping careful track of the actual distance. But now, as she considered her route and the various landmarks she had passed, she began to realize that she had covered an extraordinary amount of ground. The helicopter rescue team arrived within 30 minutes, their efficient response time, a testament to the excellent coordination between David and the emergency services. Sarah guided them to the crash site, riding along to ensure that Colonel Harrison and his granddaughter received the help they needed. As they flew over the terrain she had covered on foot, Sarah stared out the window in amazement, seeing from above the full scope of her incredible journey. The crash site was exactly where she had left it, with Colonel Harrison maintaining a careful watch over his granddaughter, who had regained consciousness and was sitting up with assistance. The rescue team worked with professional efficiency, stabilizing both patients and preparing them for transport to the nearest medical facility. Before they departed, Colonel Harrison grasped Sarah's hand with surprising strength. "You saved our lives today," he said quietly. "But more than that, you've shown me something I've never seen before in all my years of military service. Whatever you did today, whatever enabled you to run that distance and still have the strength to help us, it's something extraordinary, something that could change everything." As the helicopter disappeared into the evening sky, Sarah found herself alone with David Kim at the fire tower, the weight of the day's events finally beginning to settle upon her. The adrenaline from the rescue was starting to fade, but remarkably, her physical condition remained virtually unchanged. She felt as if she could continue running indefinitely, a realization that both thrilled and unsettled her in equal measure. "You know," David said, studying her with the keen observation skills of someone who spent his days watching for subtle changes in the forest, "I've been working in these mountains for 8 years, and I've never seen anything like what you just did. The way you moved during that rescue, the fact that you're not even breathing hard after what had to be a 50-kilometer run through some of the most challenging terrain in the region, it's not natural." Sarah looked at him sharply, suddenly aware that her extraordinary performance might have consequences she hadn't considered. "What do you mean, not natural?" David gestured toward his monitoring equipment, which included various environmental sensors and communication devices. "I've been tracking unusual readings all day, thermal signatures, seismic activity from footfall patterns, even electromagnetic fluctuations that don't match anything in my experience. At first, I thought it might be equipment malfunction, but now—" he paused, studying her intently. "Now, I think it might have been tracking you." Before Sarah could respond, David's radio crackled to life with an urgent transmission. "Fire Station 7, this is Base Command. We have reports of unusual activity in your sector. Please confirm your status and report any anomalous observations." David and Sarah exchanged glances, both understanding the implications immediately. Someone else had been monitoring the day's events, and they were taking an active interest in what had transpired. David keyed his microphone, his voice carefully neutral. "Base Command, this is Station 7. All normal here. Assisted with helicopter rescue operation approximately 1 hour ago. No other unusual activity to report." There was a long pause before the response came. "Copy, Station 7. Maintain standard monitoring protocols. Command out. Ghanaian Dunmachiusadin." The transmission ended. David turned to Sarah with an expression of growing concern. "That wasn't a routine check-in. Someone knows something and they're looking for you." He paused, then made a decision that would prove crucial to everything that followed. "There's something you need to see." David led Sarah to a secured cabinet containing specialized monitoring equipment that she realized was far more sophisticated than what would typically be found at a Forest Service station. As he powered up several devices, Sarah began to understand that David Kim was not exactly who he appeared to be. "I'm not just a forest ranger," he admitted, his fingers dancing across complex control interfaces. "I'm part of a joint military-civilian research initiative studying what we call human performance anomalies. We've been tracking unusual physiological events in this region for the past 2 years, but we've never detected anything approaching what you accomplished today." The equipment David was operating showed a detailed map of the forest preserve, overlaid with various data streams that tracked movement, energy expenditure, and other biometric information. As Sarah watched, a red line appeared on the map, tracing exactly the path she had taken during her extraordinary run. The data accompanying the line showed performance metrics that seemed to defy human limitations. "According to this data," David explained, "you maintained an average pace that would be competitive in Olympic marathon competition, except you did it for over 9 hours across terrain that should have slowed you down by at least 40%. Your energy expenditure reading suggests that your body was operating at an efficiency level that's theoretically impossible. And, most remarkably, your performance actually improved as the day progressed, rather than deteriorating as would be expected." Sarah stared at the data, finally seeing the full scope of what she had achieved. The red line on the map showed a journey of incredible distance and complexity, winding through forests, over mountains, across valleys, and through terrain that would challenge even the most experienced trail runners. The total distance was displayed in the corner of the screen, 3,132 meters of elevation gain across 47.3 kilometers of the most challenging terrain in the region. "This is impossible," she whispered, echoing Dr. Vasquez's words from hours earlier. But even as she said it, she could feel the truth of it in her body, in the continued strength of her muscles and the steady rhythm of her heart. David nodded grimly. "That's what makes this so significant. We've been searching for individuals with exceptional capabilities for years, testing theories about human potential and the possibility of enhanced performance under specific conditions. What you've done today represents a breakthrough that could revolutionize our understanding of human physiology and performance." Before Sarah could fully process this revelation, the radio crackled again, this time with a different voice. One that carried unmistakable authority and urgency. "Station 7, this is General Patricia Morrison, Joint Special Operations Command. I need to speak with Captain Sarah Chen immediately." The blood drained from Sarah's face as she realized that her chain of command had somehow become aware of her location and activities. David looked at her with a mixture of sympathy and professional concern, then handed her the microphone. This is Captain Chen, General. I'm here at Fire Station 7 assisting with emergency response operations. Captain Chen, I need you to listen very carefully. What you accomplished today has attracted attention at the highest levels of military command. We have been monitoring your performance through various surveillance systems, and I need you to understand that this situation has implications far beyond a simple training run. I'm dispatching a helicopter to your location immediately. You are to remain exactly where you are until it arrives. Sarah felt a chill run through her body as the full weight of her situation became clear. Her extraordinary performance had not gone unnoticed, and the consequences were about to become very real. She looked at David, who had been listening to the transmission with growing concern. General, with respect, I was simply conducting routine physical training. I'm not sure I understand the significance you're referring to. General Morrison's voice carried a tone that brooked no argument. Captain, the data we've collected indicates that you achieved performance metrics that exceed anything in recorded human history. Your cardiovascular efficiency, muscular endurance, and neurological coordination all operated at levels that suggest capabilities we previously thought impossible. This isn't just about personal fitness anymore. This is about national security and the future of human performance enhancement. As if to emphasize the seriousness of the situation, the sound of rotor blades began echoing through the valley, growing steadily louder as a military helicopter approached the fire station. Sarah watched through the window as the aircraft settled onto a clearing near the tower, its powerful downdraft bending trees and sending debris swirling through the air. Captain Chen, the general's voice continued, you're about to become part of something much larger than yourself. The capabilities you've demonstrated today represent a potential advancement in human performance that could change the face of military operations, search and rescue, and countless other applications. But first, we need to understand exactly what happened to you and whether it can be replicated. David placed a reassuring hand on Sarah's shoulder as armed soldiers emerged from the helicopter and began approaching the fire station. Whatever happens next, he said quietly, remember that what you did today was extraordinary in the best possible way. You saved lives, you pushed the boundaries of human potential, and you've shown that there are still mysteries about our own capabilities waiting to be discovered. As the soldiers reached the station, Sarah found herself face to face with Colonel Harrison, who had apparently recovered from his injuries with remarkable speed. He was now wearing a military uniform and carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to command situations. Captain Chen, he said, extending his hand in greeting, I believe we need to have a more complete conversation about today's events. What I told you at the crash site was true. You did save our lives. But what I didn't tell you is that Emma and I weren't just random civilians caught in an aircraft malfunction. Sarah's heart began racing as yet another layer of complexity was added to her situation. What do you mean? Colonel Harrison's expression grew serious. Emma is Dr. Emma Harrison, one of the leading researchers in biomechanical enhancement and human performance optimization. She's been working on classified projects related to advancing human capabilities for military applications. Our flight today wasn't recreational. We were conducting an aerial survey of this region, specifically looking for individuals who might be demonstrating exceptional performance characteristics. The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. Everything about her day, from her decision to extend her run to her encounter with the crash site, had been part of something much larger and more complex than she had realized. Are you saying that you were looking for me specifically? Not you specifically, Colonel Harrison replied, but someone like you, someone whose capabilities exceeded normal human limitations. What we didn't expect was to find someone whose performance was so far beyond anything we had theorized as possible. As Sarah processed this information, she became aware that her enhanced physical condition was beginning to manifest in new ways. Her hearing had become so acute that she could distinguish individual conversations among the helicopter crew, even over the noise of the still-running rotors. Her vision had sharpened to the point where she could see minute details in the forest, That should have been invisible in the gathering dusk. Most remarkably, she seemed to be developing an almost supernatural awareness of the emotional states and intentions of the people around her. She could sense David's genuine concern for her welfare, Colonel Harrison's mixture of professional excitement and personal gratitude, and something else from the helicopter crew, a combination of curiosity, respect, and perhaps a touch of apprehension. It was as if her consciousness had expanded beyond the boundaries of her own body to encompass a broader awareness of her environment and the people within it. "Captain," Colonel Harrison continued, "what you're experiencing right now, these enhanced capabilities, they're not just the result of exceptional physical conditioning. Based on our preliminary analysis, your body has undergone some kind of physiological transformation that we don't yet understand. Your cellular metabolism, your nervous system efficiency, your muscular coordination, everything has been optimized, beyond what we previously thought possible for human beings." As if to demonstrate the truth of his words, Sarah found herself automatically calculating the exact trajectory and timing required to reach each person in the clearing should she need to move quickly, analyzing the structural weak points of the helicopter and processing dozens of other pieces of tactical information without any conscious effort. Her mind had become a sophisticated tactical computer, operating seamlessly alongside her enhanced physical capabilities. "The question now," Colonel Harrison said, "is whether you're willing to help us understand what happened to you and whether these capabilities can be shared with others who might benefit from them.